Hello, happy Friday. Josh here with On the Wrong Lead. And obviously, we had today, of all the Oaks days, today was definitely one of them. Obviously, got hit with weather pretty early today. And, we only had one race come off the turf, which was nice. But we did have. I at least had a rough day. I know Mark had a bunch of close calls, but where is Nick Felsman? Torpedo Anna, let's go. I would give you the clapping sounds, but once again, do not have my soundboard. So Nick was totally right on Torpedo Anna, and I do see that Caleb hasn't joined yet, and he may be boycotting because of his. Actually, at one point, Caleb told me that he was really embarrassed that he landed on Torpedo Anna. So maybe he did end up cashing something on that. But I eventually I had a get out near the end. I thought I was going to get there. I had a 6-7 exacta box. Looked like 7 was going to hold on, and then the 6 was coming in, and the 6 was overtaken. And I'm like, okay. Then I was just hoping for that 7 to hang on, and unfortunately, prayers for the wire often go unanswered. Mark, how was your day today?
Rough day, rough day. Hit a couple things early, and then I screwed up the early pick five, which I love the sequence. Looked through it and I said, "Geez, it's pretty sloppy. That's my kind of day." I'll put my Tommy's handicapping on, and I tossed I think one of the shortest prices in the sequence, who ended up romping. So that cost me some there. And then just couldn't really. I guess I should say I handicapped really well. I had all the winners somewhere. Just couldn't get them all in the same ticket. I triple B'd the late pick 5 for a little over 10K. So obviously that's one of those you're like, okay, that's just bad structuring. That's me being a dumbass. It's not like I capped it bad. I was very close. It just I structured it bad. So that was one of those days. I mean, I think the rain early. Track played pretty darn speed favoring. I think it still was speed favoring late. I know some people were trying to make an argument, and I don't want to take Caleb's words against him or anything without him being here. But I know he was trying to make a case that maybe it wasn't a speed favoring, maybe it was just made races and that kind of thing, which it could have been said. But I think speed was good all day. You did not want to be eating a lot of kickback. Nobody was coming back from 10 out of it. It could have been a much better day than it was. I was against some short prices. For the most part, I was right, with one notable exception. And I think overall it was one of those days you look back and you go, okay, I left a lot of money on the table. I could have handicapped better. But I don't look back at it and go, oh my God, I left some monster there, or I did something stupid, or whatever else. So
Speaking of Torpedo Anna, Kenny McPeak's biggest fan, Mr. Caleb Knight. How you doing, Caleb?
Oh, pretty good. Happy National Kenny McPeak Appreciation Day to you guys as well.
Were you were on Torpedo Anna, weren't you?
I was. Yeah, I was on Torpedo Anna, kind of my top pick in there, and I didn't play the exacta, but I also did just FYI, which is funny.
Yeah. How'd you end up doing today? Any? I know you had some live ones on the line, and then you had like 2 to 5 horses that just didn't fire.
Yeah, it was that kind of day for me. Not a great day, but not a terrible day. I hit one of the early pick 5s, like the cheapest one of the day. I think I hit I think it paid like 300. And then I had a couple of nice ones going. I had the one horse that Jose Ortiz rode in the turf race. I forget the name. The horse was like 20 to 1, Fast and Furious or Fastest Flight, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that one cooking, and then I needed Diamonds and Pearls for what would have been that pick 5 that ended in the Oaks, and Diamonds and Pearls was more like just terrible. I can't think of a gem that's worse than diamonds that would be appropriate for the analogy, but it was like
Cubic
cardboard at
zirconias and
Acorns. I mean, just terrible. So
oh man, yeah, I was all over it. I had I did some Caleb stuff where I'd get bounced into pick 5, so I'd play the pick 4, and then the next thing you know, I'm in the pick 3. There's Papa Knight in the background taking a walk.
yep.
He's probably taking a walk because the speed horses that I thought were going to be the speed weren't the speed in a lot of these races, and yeah, I don't know. I had a tough time again today with the pace. I feel like I was right on the way the track was going to play, but I felt like I had the wrong horses, if that makes any sense. But that was it was pretty tough.
I was gonna say to Nick Feldman's point about having some prices, and it looks like he had that nice try with the Jose winning turf horse. I was posting our pick 5s in one of our group chats, and our good friend Raider Dave was tailing my A's and boxing them as exactas, and I think just absolutely printing money. He hit like the first 6 of the first 7, and I'm like, I haven't cashed a wager. I can't get a pick 5 home, but somebody's tailing my A's as exactas and just printing money. It's like it was one of those days, right?
That is just what Dave does, though. He just prints money.
It is. He just prints money. The man can't lose. He just
wins at life. He's too good.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Oaks Day? Anything that stood out to you?
More rain than I was expecting, and I think that kind of changed things a little bit. I knew it'd be wet early, but it continued to rain all throughout the Oaks. I think off and on.
It started pouring after the cart was over too.
Yep.
So I'm sitting here and like all of a sudden like. You couldn't really hear it, like, because I was inside all day. Couldn't really hear it, but at the end, after the races are done, we're just kind of, hanging out, drinking bourbon, and all of a sudden, you just heard it. It was really coming down.
Yeah, I capped with the intent that there might be some rain, and then I this morning went through and I recapped specifically the early sequence for the idea that there was quite a bit more rain than I expected. And I have a horrible feeling I'm going to have to do the same thing tomorrow and go reapproach because they're calling for a lot less rain tomorrow, but I don't know if I necessarily trust the weather forecast down there.
Yeah, I'll let you guys know what's going on during the morning, but I'm a couple miles from. I'm probably about like 20 minutes from the track, so. Yeah, Steven saying if it dries tomorrow, vroom. We'll see. We'll see if it dries. But
I mean, it was pretty vroomy. It was pretty vroomy today already. So I mean, how much more vroomy can it get?
Dude, how about T.O. Saint Denis? Right, I thought he was going to do it. When I saw him open up, I thought he was gone. And if that doesn't tell you what's going to happen tomorrow in the Derby, I don't know. I saw Craig Milkowski posted a tweet, kind of tongue in cheek, of like the adjusted the Timeform pace projector, and he just like extended it out a little bit more for a TO password.
Emily had a good one as well about TO. Apparently stands for take off, and with a picture of him going down the backstretch where he's in front by about 10. So
yeah. My hot take or unpopular opinion of the day is that the track actually wasn't speed biased. I think the times were fast in the sense that you're going 44 and change, and since the track is juiced. But I think a lot of that outcomes were very logical. A lot of the horses that won were extremely likely to win, horses that I would have liked under any conditions. And we did see horses close. I mean, we saw a lot of speed horses, some of the cheaper speeds fall, out the back of the field. And we did see some horses that were able to make up some ground. I mean, the winner of the last race came from off of it up the fence, and that was probably the sloppiest point of the entire day, and the maiden race at the end. And you saw a handful of horses. I mean, you didn't see any super deep runs, but you don't usually see that anyway. So, yeah, my hot take is that people are overblowing the track was insanely speed biased, couldn't ever make up a step. I don't think that's how it was at all. And I don't really care because it's Churchill, and we play this game every year on trying to project an Oaks bias to Derby Day, and it just generally does not translate.
Yeah, I think my take would be speed was definitely good. Speed was not a bad thing, but
Sure.
but I tend to agree with you. I think it's very hard, especially when you're looking at maiden races. Maiden races are very often one off the front end. That's just kind of how maiden races normally work. And there are a lot of like Idiomatic. Well, she was the fastest horse in the race. She should wire. That's what was supposed to happen. Like there was a lot of those types of races. So yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think if anything, I'm a little bit confused about the turf bias. bias. Turf seemed to be very inconsistent. I don't know if it was just limited number of turf races after the rain, jockeys not figuring it out, people not knowing where to be. The turf, I'm still a little head scratching if there is a bias there
Well,
or
it
if it
doesn't
was
matter,
just.
right? Because tomorrow the rail's going to come down. Right, they had the rail at 12 feet today.
Right.
So
Oh, did they? Oh, I didn't realize it was
yeah,
up. Okay, that makes okay. Well, yeah, there. Yeah. So, what's it matter? You're going to reset it tomorrow and go. Okay, cool. So there's yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think what we saw today was a case of just some horses really not handling the surface and some horses liking it, which tend to produce a lot of very exaggerated results and finishing margins.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think it was slant to speed or inside outside or anything like that. Although the inside seemed fine for a sloppy track, I'll agree with that point.
I
yeah,
do wish Josh had listened to his hunch about the other Chad though in that turf race because I know you
right.
specifically asked me about that horse and I was like, yeah, it does seem a little bit, and it's one of those like if you listen to your that little whatever on your shoulder or the back of your brain that's kind of saying something smells a little funny here. Yeah, that you were spot on, man.
Yeah. Nick Feldman talking about Overcharged, how game he
Oh
was coming up the rail. Uh, yeah, I mean that horse just did not want to lose, huh?
yeah, she's
Yeah, big
she's
race there.
she's she's very talented, very 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 talented.
We'll
So.
see. We'll see what the Thorograph comes back. Probably like a negative 27 or something. Whatever. Um,
Yeah, because she didn't have it easy early. There was a lot of pace pressure early, and she just got super game. Like you were not going to go by her. That was very impressive performance.
yeah. So I know Caleb, you got family in town. Obviously, if you guys can hear the background noise from me, there's a party going on next door. So why don't we get started here and maybe we get back to our respective commitments here. Mark, I don't know. I'm sure you got something to do. Race 8. We're gonna start at the Pat Day Mile. I hope. I hope I'm starting on the right race. We're gonna be going a mile here for 3-year-olds, aka the Derby washouts. And your 5-2 favorite is the 8 Top Connor. Nash at 3-1, Seize the Great 8-1, Vlahos at 8-1, and then you got double digits on everybody else. I thought this is another race that had a fair bit of speed signed on, but I thought with the way the track played today, maybe I'm not gonna be so. Hey, like this is definitely gonna be a closer in this race. So I do have two speed horses, one more versatile horse that I like. I think my top pick is the 12 Nash, cutting back. That race last time out in the hot springs, was able to show a little bit of versatility, sit, fourth off a length in the half, and close into not a blistering pace. 20, they went 23 and then 47 and 3 in that race. And I really do think that the cutback, seemed to help. That seemed to at least be the most visually impressive race that he's run in the start. Although he did break his maiden by 10 lengths that second race at Churchill. But I don't know. I thought this is one that is going to like the cutback here. I thought he's going to be this isn't one that I think needs the lead, but I did have two other horses that I think might kind of vie for the lead, and I think I want them both on my tickets. The one I'm more I think excited for is the 11 Vlahos, shipping in from the West Coast for Doug O'Neill and Edwin Maldonado. This was in Luis Mendez's barn. And Luis Mendez basically is like, hey, once they turn 3, like I don't want them anymore. So he went. He's in Doug O'Neill's barn. Doug got a win on the weekend. I think he had a nice winner on Thurby. This was another impressive maiden winner. Huge Brisnet figure. I haven't looked at other products, so I don't know how that compares on any of the other ones. But I look at those fractions: 21 and 2, 43 and 3, and I think about some of the earlier races where some of these horses were putting up 44 and still hanging on around. And I think to your point, maybe it's not necessarily the track, 100% carrying them, but speed's always good at Churchill. So I don't know. I thought this is probably your speed of the speed in this race. He is drawn pretty far outside, which gives me a little trepidation. But 8-1 in the Morning Lion seemed pretty fair. But those are kind of my two A's. Mark, where did you kind of land?
Real similar to you. Vlahos is going to be my top pick in here. Horse has, horse has a lot of inexpensive velocity. Let's put it that way. But won pretty convincingly at first ask. And this horse, per the Clocker reports, has been training absolutely lights out and like an absolute freight train. So, I think that 8-1 is an absolute pipe dream. Given that I think the word is probably out, and he may vie in here for favoritism. But I think he makes all the sense in the world. And and it also, but it does kind of concern me that the other horse I liked in here was Top Connor, who gets the cut back probably to the appropriate distance. They tried to stretch out in the bluegrass, and just not a horse that can go that far. So I happen to like the two speedballs in the race, which always is a little concerning because I didn't really see a closer that I liked. Should they go a little stupid on the front end and it comes apart, but Churchill on a big day, I'm not as worried as I would be otherwise of races melting. So 8 and 11 on top for me. One bomb that I like, but I want to see what Caleb's done to first here.
Yeah, I think we're all fairly similar on this race. I'm very similar to Mark, actually, in the sense that Vlahos and Top Connor would be my top two selections. I think Top Connor sits in this race. I don't think he's going to go. I think the fact that he made the lead in that bluegrass he was kind of obviously being used as a rabbit, in my opinion, for Sierra Leone to set that race up. So I don't think that's probably his preferred trip, going a mile and an eighth. I also don't think that's probably the way he will be ridden again tomorrow, unless we see something crazy. There is a ton of speed in here, it feels like. I mean, the inside four horses all seem to some extent like need the lead types. And then you have Vlahos on the far outside, who's arguably speed of speed. I was a little bit skeptical of that time form fig coming back just insanely fast, but the runbacks have supported that number. If anything, that number might be a little bit understated, given that a few horses have returned to actually improve based on what they put up in that race. So I think that's a solid figure, and that figure alone makes him a winner in here. My concern is that it is, first time against winners, West Coast shipping east, maybe getting a sloppy track and then stretching out to a mile for a horse that does give me sprinter vibes. But the talent is there, and at 8-1, or more realistically, probably 4 or 5-1, I think he's still a winnable horse here. I did want to look for a closer though, because there aren't. While Top Connors, I don't think he's need the lead type. It's probably a stretch to call him a closer. And as I mentioned before, there is kind of a ton of speed in here. So the two closers that I sort of landed on that I'm going to be using are both the 7 and the 9. Houday and Frosty Indulgence. Houday is probably a little bit more reliable. Posted 4 wins in a row before getting beat at Keeneland last out in the Lafayette Stakes, where he settles for second place. Was gaining ground on the winner late, but just couldn't quite get there. That was his first start in about 5 months of a layoff. So I think he just needed that race and should be sharper second time off here. So a lot to like about Houday. And then Frosty Indulgence is a bit of a, if you really want to squint, kind of look for a closer. But this horse made a nice closing kick to win the maiden at first asking at Turfway, and then was far from embarrassed next out at Keeneland in that same race in the Lafayette. Does need to take a pretty big step forward here, but at a price like 30-1 and likely to get the race set up that he needs. Only 2 career starts. He has every right to step forward again. So that's another one that I'll be interested in using as well.
Okay, I'm a little concerned, Caleb. I don't think I've ever heard you say a figure was legitimate. Like that is something that I've never heard you utter. Fake figs.
I know. Because the figs. At first blush, that fig looks fake, right? But when you dig into it,
looks freaky. Yeah.
It's tough to knock it.
I mean, there's a lot of Houday love here. Looks like Charles B likes Houday. Alex in chat also on Houday, so there's a little bit of Houday love here.
Cool. Yeah, the only other horse that I thought was a little interesting is the 3 Northern Flame. Obviously, this horse has had a lot of trips and a lot of experience, but a horse that can sit a little bit off the pace. Julian's up, so you know that this one is going. They're going to plan on closing to some degree. And my thought was that he was a little interesting. If he brings his A game, it seems like he's getting a little better. They probably have given up on that sort of Derby trail. They clearly were trying to make him into a Derby contender. Should the front end come off from this, he was a little interesting. I know he's been working really well at Churchill, so one that kind of at a big price gets that, not necessarily a closer per se, but just off the pace. They have him as an E8, really? How many are there? Like 10 E8s in this field or something?
Yeah, there's definitely a ton of speed in here.
Wow.
Per what it looks like.
He has closed, so yeah.
Yeah, I actually, believe it or not, I kind of saw, I see Julian on the board, and I know he's been wire to wire on this horse before,
Mhm.
but you see Julian on the horse, and it just makes you, I don't know, it's hard to believe him, going wire to wire on the horse. So,
Yeah.
you know, I actually went just inside on B line. I have him written down as a B, because this is another sprinter stretching out. Um, I kind of see him similar to Vlahos, but what I like is this is a much much better draw for this horse. The difference is yeah, you have the speed, you have a better draw, but this is definitely a horse that, at least figures wise, I don't think matches up with a couple of the other horses. But I mean, if you look at his last couple races, or his last two races, I mean, they've both been key races. You both have horses coming out and winning next out of them. It has had a bit of a layoff here, but you see Irad get aboard. So I thought this was a little bit of an interesting, maybe a bit of a long shot here, drawn inside. And maybe he's able to sit just outside the one, and get a good position on some of these other horses. But yeah, I really do think the two outside horses are where most of the money's going to go.
Yeah, I guess as far as the two outside horses go, I'm going to probably let Nash beat me. I think I get the feeling he ends up going off his favorite over
Yeah, for sure.
the Chad Brown horse,
Yep.
Top Connor. That seems
Yep.
like kind of a miss there on the line. And people just love this horse. And it's not that I don't think he can win, because he did show a new dimension in rating last time. But that's a lousy post for a horse that isn't going to be able to get the lead, and it's going to have to. Yeah, he did stock and pounce, but I'm not really sure what he was beating in that Hot Springs. This is clearly a better field, and I'm not sure. I mean, I'm just not really convinced that the price will be worth taking a shot at. I'm not going to be surprised if he wins, but I probably don't want to be 4 or 5 deep here and use both Top Connor and Nash. So I think Top Connor has a bit more upside and a little more versatility. I'm going to lean that direction, but yeah, Nash is one that won't surprise me if he wins, but it's probably one that won't make my tickets.
Yeah, I see PDT likes the 3 here a little bit. And Synth to Dirt for King Kenny. John Massey saying if the race is in the state of Kentucky, you can include Leperoux. So it's a shout out to you, Mark. I think on your love for Julian on short prices in Saratoga.
Quite honest, they don't have to be short. Just literally on any horse at Saratoga. I love me some Julian. You gotta love a 3% jockey,
John's talking about Otto. Who's that? Otto the Conqueror. He's looking at the slop figs, and the fact that this horse has won twice at Churchill. You guys look at this one at all?
I think if I'm looking for a slop horse, I'm going to Houdet, who's also two for two, bigger Tomlinson's, and also is perfect over the Churchill track. I don't dislike Otto. I just think that Houdet is probably a little bit better horse, at least in my book.
Now, I guess, Caleb, I got a question for you. Are you at least a little bit insulted that Houdet is an Ohio bred and not a Louisiana bred?
Well, considering Houdet is for the Bengals and Houdet is for Louisiana, I'm not insulted at all.
Oh, okay, well,
yeah, I was gonna say, Josh,
what the fuck do I know? Apparently, let's get out of here before I embarrass myself more. Dude, I don't know if I told you guys this, or I think I sent you guys a screenshot of it, but there's a guy on YouTube. I left a comment on my YouTube short on Fierceness, and said, watching your YouTube short just made me put an additional $300 on Fierceness.
Love it.
Who are you going to make money on off this? So I posted in one of our group chats. I was like, this must be Andrew Champagne's burner out there. But yeah, let's move on to race 9 here. And we're going to be going on the American turf here, mile and 16th on the turf. And we talked a little bit about the turf here. And guys, I'm going to be honest with you. Maybe this was lazy handicapping by me, but I think I'm going to single the Appleby horse in this spot. I know last year Appleby didn't win at like 60% or whatever he did like before, but and I guess he's been quote unquote a little cold lately. I mean, he's still 52% over the last 2 years, so nothing to sneeze at. But I mean, there were just a lot of horses in this race that I just don't like, and I feel like if Applebee's shipping this one in, Frankie's riding. I know actually, Caleb, I think you had kind of a thing like, well, maybe if William Buick's not in town, that maybe this is not a big time horse, but I don't know. I mean, I look at the rest of this field, and like who am I gonna bet? Am I gonna go back to Agate Road like after they decided to try? He couldn't win on the turf all of a sudden. They put him on the dirt, and he couldn't win there either. Like there's nothing in here that I like. So I think I'm just gonna go with the I guess the relatively unknown to us, the shipper coming in for Charles Appleby, and just hoping that gets me through this race.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that you will not get half that price on Legend of Time. I would imagine he's going to take a ton of money and will be probably more like 2-1, 5-2 sort of range. Probably more like 2-1, I would imagine. But yeah, I actually thought this was a really interesting race. I thought it was fairly wide open. I had a really hard time getting a feel for this. A lot of horses seem to be in really good form. Pretty flat race as far as figures are concerned. And I actually ended up on three horses right in a row here. Legend of Time, Neat, and Stay Hot were the three that I was most interested in. Obviously, you talked about Legend of Time. Neat is actually a very, neat story. Sorry about that. But, for Rob Altris, who apparently can train turf horses at a national level, which no one realized. And Raylu has been just seems to get this horse. He's been really, really good on him those last two efforts. I thought that Keeneland performance in the last was actually really, really impressive. Really nice, really sustained move down the front stretch. And then I thought Stay Hot, who's obviously another horse who's been in really, really good form. And nice to see Fressu stick with him out and come out. So I thought all three of those made a lot of sense. I'm not sure what the pace dynamic specifically looks like in this race. So I have a little bit of spread sort of across, just not having a real good feel for what's going to work. I know, as you guys said, the rails come in. I don't know what's going to be working tomorrow. So I'm okay being a little spready here and hoping I can find a price.
Yeah, I think for me, handicapping this race, there's sort of two decisions that you have to make. The first being, what do you think of the Appleby horse? And the second being, what do you think of the horses exiting the Transylvania? Because that's a very common race for a lot of the runners that are coming back to run the American Turf on Saturday. Starting with the Appleby horse, I'm not super enamored with this runner. I'm not saying that I'm totally going to throw him out and he won't be on any of my tickets, but he's basically been beating up on the same two or three horses over in Dubai all winter. I mean, Shamrock Glitter, Alfan, Musical Act, Alfan. I mean, the same horses just routinely keep getting dumpstered. So I'm not really sure how much I'm impressed by that. Musical Act did come to run at Keeneland, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
And he really didn't flatter the form of Legend of Time there. I think he finished 5th or 6th, maybe. He had a bit of a trip in there, but not nearly enough to justify the performance, in my opinion. So to me, Legend of Time sort of seems like a horse that if this was a stronger contingent of US-based turf horses, I wouldn't use this horse at all. I mean, if he was running last year in the version of this race that had Carl Spackler and Farbridge and those kind of turf horses, Talk of the Nation and whatever, no shot am I using Legend of Time. Unfortunately, it seems like this year's 3-year-old crop of turf horses is just not that good. So I'm a little bit less inclined to just throw out the Appleby runner against a bunch of mediocre-looking U.S. horses. But the one I will kind of draw attention to is the number 11, Cugino. And maybe this horse is just like Web Slinger 2.0 and just finds trouble. But he's certainly had some rough trips in his last couple of starts. There's no doubt in my mind he was 2 lengths the best in the Transylvania. So I'd encourage anyone to go back and watch that race if you haven't watched the replay. He was, bumped super wide into the first turn. He goes 6 wide into that turn. He makes a very early move, too early in my opinion, and kind of grabs the lead while wide on the second turn as well, and then just barely gets beat by Neat, who absolutely tripped out, saving every inch of ground behind the leaders. I don't want anything to do with Neat in here. I think that horse was a product of a very favorable trip, whereas Cugino and even a few others like Can Group and Lord Bullington both had rougher trips. So in my mind, those are kind of the horses I'd be looking towards. I'm a little nervous, though, because he's once again drawn outside. Castellano is not the jock I want for this horse. He doesn't really save ground anymore at this point of his career, and I could see him getting another much the best third-place finish once again. But we'll wait and see. But I think there'll be enough upside there with Appleby runner to make that worth it.
You need a better alert, Josh. You need a better one. That is, I mean, I respect the try. I mean, but
Yeah, I mean, like Caleb, I kind of had like the same, I guess the same outlook as you. I just couldn't find anyone I liked in this race, and so I figured, I mean, let's take the Appleby. I guess I don't know. It's probably a lazy way of looking at it, but there's just I have a hard time getting excited about any of these horses. I did look at the 7 Stay Hot a little bit, and but I mean the West. I mean this race is bad enough that I'm actually looking at a West Coast turf horse, which I think just tells you how bad this race was. They tried this one in the juvenile turf, and then they ran it in 3 straight stakes races and won all 3. And Frazu is definitely a very, very good turf jock. So he won a nice race on Thursday. So I don't know. I thought that this one might be a little bit interesting as an outsider, but I think I'm sticking with Legend of Time here.
Hey, Caleb, did you give the 10 horse set any look? 2 for 2 lifetime. Jose Ortiz gets them out, after shipping in for those Florida races. I thought that Cutler Bay was fairly nice. This is one of those horses I think we don't really know what he is yet. But I really wonder how much upside there is there. I mean, it is a Cassie horse, and I know sometimes Cassie is he's just Cassie sometimes. But any thought here?
Yeah, definitely a horse that I'm interested in. Probably needs to run faster, but with only 2 starts and 2 wins, certainly I think that's in the realm of possibility. I'm not sure what I think of the races he's been in. The Maiden and the Cutler Bay, I don't think were very strong. He was 3-5 in that Cutler Bay, so clearly that tells you quite a bit about that race. But certainly a class test here, so maybe kind of price dependent. But he's one that I think, at least as a new face in a race full of other horses who I feel like I kind of know who they are and what they bring, at least this one has some potential unknown element that maybe steps forward.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, very similar take to what I had. Cool.
Anything else?
Right. I looked at 13 a bit. He might make one of my tickets. Similar reasons as the 11, but I don't need to talk about him. I don't like Agate Road at all. I agree with you there.
Yeah, I don't like Agate Road, but I mean, the other one I thought was Lord Bullington, the 8. If this race does come apart a little bit, would be kind of interesting.
Joel Rosario, or Uncle Sully saying Joel Rosario was an up-and-coming turf jockey once. Of course, that was in the Clinton administration.
His ride today in the Oaks has to go down in Joel Rosario Hall of Fame level. You're on the speed horse. He was on the horse on the outside that drew in that you had to make the lead. He had one trip and he goes 6 wide around the freaking first corner and basically gets shuffled back to last. It's like, what are you doing, you moron? Get your horse out of the gate and freaking go. You have one way to go. Even if you miss the break, you still have to go. You have no other option.
It looks like Charles is interested in the 15 if he can draw in here, the Mike McCarthy horse.
I did not look that far out. The synth horse?
I would be interested in that horse. I'm not saying I'd love him, but he's one I have marked down as a question mark on my form. I mean, clearly kind of throw the dirt race out, but wasn't beaten much by Encino and Epic Ride in those 2 turf starts, and his turf form is pretty good. So he's one that I could see using.
Yeah, and I see Fighting Irish asking why no Agate Road, and I think this is something that I kind of picked up from Caleb, maybe a little bit from Mark too. You see these super trainers, like, they know what they're doing when it comes to horses, and Bob Baffert notoriously only puts horses on turf when he knows he's got no other option, and he just knows they're not taken to the dirt. But this horse, they clearly thought it was a turf horse, and then all of a sudden they ran it on dirt, and that's just not something that Todd normally does. And if in the past when he's had a horse like this, what he's done is instead of going to Tampa for the Sam F. Davis, he's gone to Turfway Park and he's running the synthetic. Who was that? It was that Mawish horse that he had that ended up running second in the Jeff Ruby Stakes. I forget.
I know you're talking about. I forget his name.
But it was basically the same thing.
The horse's name. Yep.
It was basically the same thing. It was this kind of thing. But all right, hey, you want to run the Derby? Let's go let's try a synthetic with this turf horse. But they tried twice. So it just feels like they don't know what to do with the horse. Maybe it's a 2-year-old that just hasn't developed as a 3-year-old. I'm just not keen on taking a short price on him going back to the turf. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think he's exposed. I mean, I think he was a somewhat precocious 2-year-old that has just not gotten any better at 3. It kind of got mismanaged with the Derby fever a little bit, and it's kind of a one-dimensional plotter that's got a terrible draw and would need something I haven't seen in a lot of just racing luck to pull off the upset. And at what's going to be a short price, I don't need him.
Yeah, Caleb said it perfectly.
So he's good looking and articulate. Okay, we'll move on. Race 10 here, Churchill down stakes. We've got 7 furlongs here on the main track. Your main favorite or your favorite here is going to be the number 6 Zozo. So you got 7-2 on the 11 Hoist to Gold, 4-1 on the 2 Tejano Twist. Caleb, who the hell is Mr. Wireless? And why is he on? Why is he on my PPs?
Is that what did he win? Did he win the West Virginia Derby, the Ohio Derby?
I think it was one of them, and I think it might have been the West Virginia Derby, and we were like, who the hell is Mr. Wireless? And sure enough,
he did. He won the West Virginia Derby.
Yeah, Mr. Wireless is still.
He also won the Indiana Derby, so put some respect on his name.
Okay. Well, Mark, I'll let you go first because I know there's a horse in here that you absolutely love.
There's a horse in here that I absolutely love.
I thought you were all over Hoist to Gold.
Are you confused? I want no part of Hoist to Gold in this race. I think the race to me is really a 2-horse race, and those 2 horses are Zozos and Gun Pilot. I mean, the morning line is just terrible on Gun Pilot. You're not going to get any of those kind of odds on Gun Pilot. But I think on figures, both Zozos and Gun Pilot kind of stand out above the field here. They have a fairly substantial advantage. I mean, I think if you purely are a figure person and you ignore the Dubai bounce angle on Hoist the Gold, he makes some sense. But of course, I shouldn't probably say this. I did get boomed on one Dubai shipper this year. They're already today. But no, I mean, I think those are your 2 major players, at least for me. I think you're going to get a lot of value on Gun Pilot, given it is not as known of a jock. I mean, obviously Asmussen's known, but Torres Up is a lesser known Asmussen connection. So those are the 2 I was most interested in. I have nothing crazy creative to say in this race other than I think some of the morning lines are bad, and I am 100% hard against Hoist the Gold, so I'll put him right in the winner's circle for you.
Caleb?
Who was your other horse, Mark? Gun Pilot and who?
Zozos.
Okay. Yeah, so I agree with Mark in the sense I also don't want any of Hoist the Gold. I think he's a nice horse, but shipping back over from Saudi is always tough. I think that his Cigar Mile was extremely influenced.
The grade 2 Cigar Mile. Make sure to mention that to upset Andrew Champagne.
It upsets me almost as much as it upsets Andrew, quite honestly. So
yeah, Cigar Mile, grade 2, by the way, is it was extremely a rail biased and speed biased track that day. You can even tell by the figure that was kind of an aberration. His Pegasus wasn't bad, but I think it's kind of taken something out of him. And his Saudi race was terrible. Now coming back here after shipping. The one thing he does have going for him is that he's likely to be controlling speed, but I'm going to be inclined to play against him off the ship angle and the fact that I think he'll get overbet based off of that really juiced up fig. I also like Gun Pilot. I agree with Mark there. I think this horse is going to get really bet down from that 10-1 line because I think about every handicapper I've talked to is using this horse in some capacity. So he's not likely to be 10-1. Zozos, I don't need Zozos. I don't think. I just don't think he's very talented. He got away with murder in the ACAC, and he's been kind of beating up on a bunch of listed stakes runners and weak grade 3s. I just don't think he's this good. And if he was going to be 8-1, I could maybe use him. But giving me 3-1, or even if he goes off more like 5-1, I'm just not interested. So with that being said, there's a lot of ways I think you can go in here. I already mentioned I like Gun Pilot along with Mark. But my top pick is actually a horse that's going to need some help. But I'm going back to the well for what feels like the 34th time on the number 9-3 technique. This is a horse that really has just not had any racing luck in a long time, and he may once again be unlucky. But I think this horse can win on his day. That Cigar Mile I talked about was very speed biased and a very strong rail. This horse didn't spend one step on the rail the entire way. He was also chasing after a gate to wire winners, so I thought that was a better race than it looked. In the Breeders' Cup Sprint, he's clearly just not as good as other horses in that race. That was a very ambitious spot. And that was also a relatively mild pace given the capacity of horses he was up against. And then if you look at some of the other times he's been beaten, like Zozos, I mean, just chasing extremely slow fractions. I mean, his last, not counting his last race against the bias, but his prior 4 races were all blue on time form, indicating a slow pace. And he just hasn't got an honest shot to actually make his late run. So this is a horse that has had success in the past over Churchill and does do pretty well at the 7 furlong trip. Gets Castellano back up, who, despite my personal opinions there, was aboard for the last win. So he's one that it will need a little bit of pace to run at, but I do think he's better than his form shows, and he's likely to get dismissed on the board.
Okay, 2 things. First off, who's the Castellano simp now? And considering this is 2 races in a row. And second off, I think we need to have Chase help you write a breakup letter with 3 technique because it's getting a little bad, man. I'm feeling for you.
Yeah, I don't have any of the horses that you guys talked about. I actually landed on the aforementioned unknown horse, number 4, Mr. Wireless. And this, I really like to see when these routers, who seem to maybe have started going off form a little bit, they come back on a cutback and then they immediately win. And he set a nice stalking trip at Fairgrounds off. I mean, I don't know why Brisnet has this coded as a slow pace. I mean, they went 22, 45, and 1, which is pretty fast, but he set a nice stalking trip and was able to win and won pretty convincingly by 4 and a quarter lengths there with a real pretty eye-popping Briz speed figure. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't looked at other products, see what those look like. But I just thought with a nice inside draw here, he's going to be able to get good position and be able to make that run. Raylu stays aboard. So I really liked Mr. Wireless in this spot. I think Uncle Sully said that sounded like a Josh horse, and he was right. And I know this is a 6 furlong horse, and honestly,
oh God, are you seriously? You're seriously going back here?
This is
really?
something I've had a problem with a lot of these horses in this race. Is we have a lot of 6 furlong horses. We have a lot of milers. We don't have a lot of 7 furlong horses. So I know I'm, maybe making a stretch here, but Tejano Twist, I feel like hasn't run a bad race in almost a year. I mean, he's been right there in every single race, and it doesn't matter if it's a fast pace, if it's a moderate pace. He seems to always be right there. I mean, you look at some of the horses that he's going against, Skelly and Jackson Traveler, who both those horses probably would be, would probably be among the favorites, if not the favorites in these races. So
I'll give you Skelly, but absolutely not with Jackson Traveler.
Hey, he won the Widmore. Come on. But Skelly for sure. I mean, Skelly's legit. So, yeah, I don't know. I think he's been going against some decent horses. I do have a question, though, because of how we've seen these Oaklawn horses kind of I feel like they haven't really run all that well. I mean, here and there, we've seen a couple of Sparks of Brilliance, but I don't know. I think that Oaklawn's kind of a weird track sometimes. So I don't know. I landed on those 2 horses as my top picks. I'll be honest, you guys. I didn't look at Gun Pilot, but I mean, the fact that everyone's on it. I mean, maybe I need to take another look. Hoist the Gold. The big thing about him is that I think he's only got one of his wins at 7 furlongs. Most of them have I think he's done most of his damage at either 6 or a mile. So, I mean, maybe that's just unlucky, but he's had quite a few tries at the 7 furlongs, and that's kind of my thing with Zozos is Zozos on the cutback. he's shown speed and he's won on the lead, but he's shown miler speed, and we have 6 furlong speed in this race. So, I'm not really sure what to expect. I don't like betting these Breeders' Cup horses that didn't run that well in the Breeders' Cup, coming off a long layoff, showing up in a Grade 1 like this. These are types of horses I'd like to fade. So, yeah, Zozos isn't going to be on any of my tickets. So I'm just going to go with the 4 and the 2 here. And maybe I'll sprinkle in some of your guys' horses in here if I got some budget.
Yeah, I
Do you
think.
want to be? Do you want to beat him up, Caleb, or do you want me to? Okay,
I mean, let me start and then you can jump in. I mean,
okay, cool.
Mr. Wireless runs, if you believe the figure, a career top after a year layoff as a 6-year-old. This doesn't feel like the spot you want to bet him back. And the horses from that race, at least on time form, have regressed on average 15 points from the 3 runbacks. I think that's an interesting play.
Yeah, Kavad did not exactly come back. I like
no,
Kavad.
horses have not flattered out of that.
Yeah, I liked Kavad at the. I think did he run on Tuesday or Wednesday, and he didn't run very well.
But it's a hungry race. It's a soft Grade 1. So I mean, if you think they figured something out on the cutback, then I don't mind like taking a shot on something like a tail on a twist, even though I think he is probably going to have too much to do in the lane given the lack of speed in here and the 7 furlong versus 6 furlong issue. But I mean, I say that and somewhat genuinely because I'm not going to use those horses, but somewhat also in jest because you could easily poke as many holes in the horses that I'm going for as well. Yeah. It's an ugly race where you sort of have to decide what you're okay with and what you're willing to forgive. I mean, I made a case for 3 technique. I also think Hear Me Song is a very interesting player in here at 20-1. I like this horse in the Commonwealth prior to the scratch. The trainer decided to train him up to this race instead. So there's clearly some confidence there. And, on top of that, I think that, he prepped for that Commonwealth the same way as he is this year, coming out of the Big Daddy race at Turfway. Didn't run all that great there, and then came back to win the Commonwealth 7 furlongs at the dirt at Keeneland last year. Coming in this year, pretty much the same with that same prep race at Turfway with a similar effort level. It'll be interesting to see, how he manages off of the slightly longer layoff compared to the timing of the Commonwealth and, how he'll handle Churchill versus Keeneland. But he's a horse that, if I'm going to make excuses for horses, I don't want to make an excuse for a horse at 7-2 or 4-1. I'd much rather do it at a horse that's 20-1.
Yeah. Mark?
I'm good. I mean, Caleb picked up holes in it. I mean, my main thing is I looked long and hard at Tiano Twist because I tried to make a case for that horse. I really like the horse. My thing is, this isn't 6 furlongs, and also he hates Churchill. So, I mean, he's 2 for 10 here. And he's a horse that wins pretty consistently. He just doesn't win consistently at Churchill. And my thing with Mr. Wireless is I think he's consistently been class exposed. He's a horse that if you throw him into an optional 100 or an optional 150, he's a horse that wins races. When you raise the class up, he runs nice races. He would be a horse I would never leave off my trifecta. He just doesn't seem to win at this level. So I had a real hard time with Mr. Wireless. Somebody made me add him into the group ticket, and I did so begrudgingly because it was a group ticket. But otherwise, he would have been a nothing of mine. So
how was the group ticket, Mark? What was we AA, AB?
AB.
AB.
Yeah, I had the 5 as a B. Initially it was an A, and then with how the track was playing, I played around. I tried to put a little bit more of a wet bias into it, and I think the track played a little bit more fair later in the day, and also Rosario's a freaking moron. So yeah, that hurt.
Uncle Sully said, "It's all right, Josh. Remember, Caleb went with 2.5 technique."
I'll be happy for 2 technique at this point.
Yeah. Kevin saying, "Yeah, that was me who wanted Mr. Wireless. I regret nothing." Kevin, thank you for doing God's work. I was unable to fight for Mr. Wireless.
I regret nothing. I love it.
And I will say, Uncle Sully is right. If Hoist the Gold wins, I will go back to therapy. So,
is Hoist the Gold this year's Flagstaff? People are asking.
Probably. Yeah. If I get Flagstaff, it's going to be Hoist the Gold this year. Yep.
I mean, yeah, it's Hoist the Gold's best race. I mean, just absolutely dumpsters his field, but that's the problem, right? I don't think we're going to get his best race here. All right, race 11, the Turf Classic. We're going to be going 1 mile in the 8th on the turf, and Your morning line favorite is going to be the 11 and Naval Power, another one of these shippers here. Program trading at 9-2. I'm very busy at 4-1. Integration at 5-1. Bar Bridge at 8-1, and then you got double digits on everybody else. Caleb, where did you land here?
Yeah, I thought this was a tough race because I think the best horses in the race are ones that are probably going to be a little bit compromised by what, in my opinion, seems like there's absolutely no speed. Oh, let me take that back. There's absolutely one speed. The number 8, Ever Surprised, seems like Josh's bread and butter kind of a horse here. Yeah, it's no surprise that big fat A. But
No one was surprised that Never Surprised was in
I
there.
mean, Josh needs to give no commentary anymore. We just Caleb and I can pick his horses. This is great.
yeah, I mean, I don't think Never Surprised is good enough to win this race. But that being said, he's good enough to go out there and slow it down enough. It's going to compromise a few others, I think. The horses who I think are probably the best horses in this field are Integration, I'm Very Busy, and Naval Power. I probably think that arguably Naval Power is the horse to beat. He didn't beat Master of the Seas in that Maker's Mark Mile, but Master of the Seas is really good. I mean, he would be 4-5 in this field if he showed up. And he ran a good race. It was a slow pace. He was somewhat far off the pace. He shuffled, he kind of missed the break a little bit, and then put in a nice effort to be a comfortable second while never threatening the winner. That was his third start off of a year-long layoff, and I'm expecting an improved effort here today, especially because he handles the soft turf, the yielding turf, the soft turf, which I can't imagine the turf will be anything better than good, probably yielding for tomorrow. So I think he's one that is most likely the horse to beat, but he doesn't have a ton of early speed. And he also tends to break a little bit slowly, which could be dangerous with that post draw and that relatively short run to the first turn. So Naval Power is the one who I think is the most talented horse, but is going to have to overcome some things from that trip. And it's likely going to be a short price. So a horse that I find almost as appealing that is going to like a better race setup is the number 1 Integration. I know people were in love with this horse at some point last year. And he probably isn't the second coming of Up to the Mark, despite what people are trying to make him be. But he is a nice horse. And I do think he ran a nice race in that Maker's Mark Mile, where he was actually even further behind the slow pace than Naval Power was, and passed a couple of horses while never threatening the top 2. My question about him was that race, while not poor, was also maybe not quite what I was hoping to see. And I do just wonder, I mean, maybe he likes the turf a little bit firmer. I mean, he's run his better races over that, pretty stiff turf at, Colonial and then Aqueduct and then down to Gulfstream when it was still pretty warm. So I'm not really quite sure how he's going to handle it, which is why I think this is a difficult race to take a strong stance on. I approach this race similar to the Oaks in the sense that I think there's about 4 or 5 horses that I view very similarly. They are all the top 4 or 5 horses in the betting choice, and I would struggle to adamantly make a case for one versus the other.
Mark?
Yeah, no, I very much agree with everything Caleb said. And there's the one piece that Caleb didn't mention is I think it's really interesting, the jockey flop on the 1 and the 11. Frankie goes to the 11 and Tyler goes to the 1. I don't know if there's anything to be made of that. Who knows? It's one of those ones. It doesn't seem like there was a jockey issue or there was a terrible ride or anything like that preempted it. But I do find it interesting to see that the jockeys flopped to the 2 of them. And so I sort of went a slightly different direction, given that I didn't know what to make of that. And, I wanted somebody who's going to be a little bit more forwardly placed. So I thought the 5 program trading made a lot of sense. 4 or 5 lifetime, never missed the exact. This is Chad. Obviously, Chad's been on fire this weekend so far. Chad loves to show up on these Derby weekends and just boom everybody. Not that a 9-2 is really going to boom anybody, who makes quite a bit of logical sense, but the figures fit. This horse is not that much slower than anybody else, and does really like to get his photo taken. So always something to like. And Josh already put up the fake chat alert. So I'm going to get double alerted here in just a second, because I'm going to go back to the Webslinger as well. I know Webslinger has had 7 or 8 bad trips in a row, and say what you will about that, but he's 2 for 2 across this Churchill surface, and this Churchill turf course is a bit of a weird one. That the turf is a little funny, so I wonder if he just really likes Churchill, and this is just a surface he gets along with well. I don't know. Given all this rain, it's going to be a very different Churchill surface than it was this time last year. But I think Webslinger is going to get probably a little ignored, given the fact that he kind of has a case of the, I don't know, he invents bad trips. Let's call it that. And I'll give him one more shot here, given the fact that he's back to a track that he seems to really enjoy.
Yeah, it's been interesting watching the turf and not just see it like disintegrate under people, under like the hooves of the horses. So
Gigantic
I think they
clod
might
chunks
have. I think it took 3 years, but I think it finally took. So
Josh, let's let him run it over it for more than 3 or 4 days before we say that, because we said
true.
that last year and it made it like 2 weeks, and then they stopped using it because it turned into Swiss cheese.
Yeah. So my top pick in this race is Naval Power. Obviously, this Master of the Seas. He wasn't able to get to him, but was able to, he got shuffled a little bit and was able to, get up for second in that race in the Maker's Mark Mile. I like that he's been here for a start already, and he's not shipping in, like a lot of these horses end up shipping in. And Master of the Seas would, like Caleb said, would probably be like 3 to 5, 4 to 5 in this field. So I like Naval Power in here. I don't hate getting rid of Tyler Gaffleone for Frankie Dettori. So I think Naval Power makes all the sense in the world. I would be remiss, because I feel like every big live stream that we do that Never Surprise is on, I pick him, and if he wins and I'm not on it, I don't know if I'm going to be able to come back from that. So obviously, Never Surprise on was my kind of it was actually, I think, my best bet of the day. It wasn't even my long shot pick. I think it was my best bet of the day, and I think it was Andrew's long shot. I just think, this is going to be a lone speed situation. There's really no one else that's going to go out there. Yeah, I wish there was Luis Saez aboard, not Flo Giroux, but similar to, I think, Julian Leparoux, you can bet Flo in Kentucky, I think. So he's only got one way to go, and it's forward. And you know what? I think there is going to be there's a chance for there to be an E8 Rapoli Pletcher winner, and it's going to be Never Surprised. And like I said before, I don't think anyone's surprised that I landed on that horse. Let's see. Alex mentioning that Frankie rode Master of the Seas in the Maker, so maybe because he's available, that's why he came over. So. Uncle Sully said 4 for 5 lifetime, gets to the front, figures fit, and he's not ridden by Joel Rosario. He's in.
I'm glad to see Uncle Sully and I have aligned. So yeah.
Josh betting Never Surprised and Mr. Wireless like it's 2006.
Hey, here we go, man. Nick Feldman says he's on Farbridge. It's a big opinion. He's going to go after this one. He thinks that this is a horse that's going to really step up in this 4-year-old season. Mark, I already saw you take a dig on him, but he did give us Torpedo Anna. So Nick 1, Mark Capitan 0. Did either of you guys give Farbridge a look?
I did. I mean, you have to give Farbridge a look in here. He's a horse that does have that one Belmont figure from I don't know, July of last year or whatever, the Belmont Derby, that does fit here. But he just really hasn't backed it up. And again, he's one of these types of horses. He has that one big effort and then took money and just kind of disappointed. Never seems to get it done. Or I shouldn't say never seems to get it done. I mean, Chris, he's 4 for 8 lifetime. I'm giving shit on the horse, but I just don't like him in this spot. I think he's gonna have a ton to do in the lane, and I just think there are others that I'm much more interested in than Farbridge. And maybe Nick's right, and maybe I'm just ignoring a horse that makes a lot of sense, who does like to win and get his photo taken. But I went other places, and I just, he's bounced around a ton of barns. He's back into the Clement barn, but Clement barn had him good before. I don't have a real good reason for disliking him. I just liked others more.
He's fine. I don't really like him that much. But I think he's fine. I mean, I think he needs to improve, and maybe he will. If you're a believer, you'll get your price. Probably for the first time ever on Farbridge, you'll get your price. But for me, he seems kind of plotty, and I just think there's probably others I would rather go to.
See if there's anything else. Alex asking, is I'm very busy an A or a B?
I mean, if you really believe that last race, I think he's got to be an A. This horse was kind of lousy for the better part of his 3-year-old season, and then over the winter, somehow this horse woke up and ran a good Pegasus and a phenomenal Munez Memorial race at Fairgrounds. So, yeah, I mean, the horse is going to get bet hard off of that effort, I'm sure, but that was a huge race. So, for me, that horse is probably going to be an A. But I do think it's one that you got to be careful if you're not going to use it all.
Yeah, I think I'm very busy as one of those horses that every single race seems to take a tiny little step forward. Chad Brown horses are normal for taking these big leaps forward, and this is a horse that improves a couple of points in time for him every single race and seems to just keep getting better and better and better. Eventually that has to run out, but I have no issues with I'm very busy. I have written down as a B. That's probably me being an idiot, honestly. And just close your eyes and bet, Chad.
All right. Let's move on to the Kentucky Derby. And obviously, if you guys haven't seen, we did put out a YouTube short for every single runner in the Derby. So it'll take you a total of 20 minutes to watch all of them if you want to go ahead and see, just kind of 1 minute thoughts on each of the horses in here. We'll probably talk about a lot of this field, but obviously there's 22 written in here, 20 drawn in. Your favorite is going to be Fierceness at 5-2, Sierra Leone at 3-1, Catching Freedom at 8-1. You got double digits on everybody else. And I saw a tweet from Marshall Graham. He had the imputed odds out there, and it looked like Fierceness was sitting around 2-1, Sierra Leone around, I think, 3.5 to 1.
I thought it was
And
like
then
5-1.
was it 5-1?
Oh,
And then
let me pull it. Yep.
I saw Catching Freedom was still at 8-1, and I couldn't believe it because I didn't think I would remotely get close to that price. And I think actually Forever Young was, I think, closer to 7 or 8-1. So yeah, it's. I think it's going to be an interesting betting race. I think you're going to get your price on everybody but Fierceness. If your opinion is that you like Fierceness, then please contact Andrew Champagne, and you guys can start a fan club. And but yeah, I was actually. It's funny. So I'm here in Louisville. I'm with a bunch of people who some of them go to the track a couple times a year. Some of them only party for the Derby, and we're just talking. And one of the guys, we were just talking about something, and I was just kind of explaining to him like, look, like if Fierceness, if you really like Fierceness and you want to make money, and let's say you want to bet $100 on the day, just put your whole $100 on Fierceness. Like, there's nothing wrong with that if that's your opinion. But like, if you got to figure out a way to make money on an opinion, And I'm like, if he's going to be that short, play him on top of exactas and stuff like that, right? Like that's fine. But I have a really hard time taking 2-1, 2.5 to 1 on a 20-horse field in a race that I think he's going to be very pace compromised. We saw what Tio Saint Denis did today. So Tio Password, I think, is going to have the same plan. Fierceness, Door Knock. You got just a ton of other Track Phantom. I mean, West Saratoga's got speed. You just got a ton of speed in here. And if I'm not betting the speed, like like there's got to be way too much of it in here, right? So I'm fading Fierceness here. That's kind of my opinion. Second choice is obviously Sierra Leone, and I have Sierra Leone written down as a B, and that's more because I'll use him horizontally, but and I might even use him as an A horizontally, but like in single race bets, I don't think I'm not betting him to win. I'm not using him on top in exactas. My top pick is actually the 4, Catching Freedom, and that Louisiana Derby race. He came from way out of it on a track that generally is not closer friendly, right? And he does have a race over the slop in case we do get some weather here, but that was another one where he didn't get much pace, and Sierra Leone actually got the jump on him, and Track Phantom held on for second there. So, but I don't think that he's not going to handle it, and I think that this is definitely one that you've seen improving, and I think is improving at the right time here. So Catching Freedom, I think, has got the right run style that I'm looking for in this year's Derby. Is got a good post draw. Is going to be able to save some ground, and you know, this is for Uncle Sully. As much as I don't like Flavian Pratt, he has a very good record in the Derby, and he's been able to navigate some pretty good trips in the Derby. So I just don't see him getting into trouble, and I think that he's going to be a force to reckon with, and I think he's a genuine A and my top pick in this race. And Caleb, before I start talking about my second A, I think this is a horse that you're really wanting to key in on, and that's a 7, Honor Marie.
It is, yeah. And before I totally jump in there, I'll just say that I agree with you on Catching Freedom. I like that horse in here. Will be on essentially all of my tickets. The one thing that I will kind of comment is they both exited the Louisiana Derby, Honor Marie and Catching Freedom, and I like them both in here. I'll be using them both. I'm leaning a little more towards Honor Marie simply because I think that he has a step forward in him that I think we may have already seen from Catching Freedom. Catching Freedom ran a nice race in Louisiana Derby, came through with a new top, and it was a good effort. Finally fixed some of those just green issues that we've seen. For the majority of his career, he's lugged in pretty bad in the stretch. He kind of hangs on his left lead for a while, or has a very late lead change. He kind of put it together and ran professionally in the Louisiana Derby, and it was a good race. I hated his gallop out. It was awful. But if that's the only thing that I'm really picking on, it's okay. With that being said, I think Honor Marie, despite losing to Catching Freedom twice and a few others, I think that this is a horse that is sitting on a monster race. It is the horse that, in my opinion, is most likely to run a improved effort, is coming into this race, training lights out in the morning, third start off the layoff, should get an honest pace up front and pair it up with his 2-year-old top. I mentioned that on last night's stream about Torpedo Anna, the horse that paired her 2-year-old top with that Thoroughgraph figure of 4. She busted through in a huge way today. I could see something quite similar for Honor Marie. I don't think she's going to win by open lengths the way that Torpedo Anna did, because her career top is not really that fast relative to others in the field. Torpedo Anna enjoyed an advantage there. But I do think a forward move is extremely likely, and whether she wins or hits the board, she'll be my key for everything tomorrow in the Derby. He'll be my key. God, I'm going to keep saying she because of the name, but it's
because of the name Marie. Yeah, I did the same
Yeah.
exact thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think if I tend to be a Derby or a Beyer speed theorist as far as relates to the Derby, where you want 100 Beyer speed in a prep race. There's technically 2 horses in this race that have done that. Obviously, Fierceness has done it twice, and then Mystic Dan has 100 in, but it just happens to be in a slop race. My questions with Fierceness begin and end. Obviously, we've talked about. He's by far, if he brings his A game, if Fierceness shows up with the best stuff he has, he's towers over this field, right? Like he's much the best in here. The questions are, he's never really faced a pace dynamic where he's been pressured early. He's a horse that clearly has some, I'm assuming, mental issues at this point. I know there's a lot of rumors about physical issues as well. But I'm assuming mental issues, and he's had a couple of races where
Who doesn't have mental issues right now?
Dude, seriously, I mean, that is the point. But no, I mean, his Holy Bull and his Champagne, you have to scratch your head at both those performances. Is he just in every other type? Does he bounce to the moon after those big performances? If you're somebody that's a bounce theorist, you're saying he's a complete toss in here. But if you look at that Florida Derby or his BC Juvie, he's an absolutely massive standout. So he's a horse that I think is hard to figure out what to do with. is he should he be your favorite? Yeah, he should be your favorite. He's clearly the horse that if he brings his A game, he has the most talent and the most upside. But that's a big if for me. And so, to no surprise, I landed on the 2-horse Sierra Leone, who's a horse that's 3 for 4 lifetime. Had some excuses in that Remsen, and just kind of consistently gets better every race. That last race is a 98 Bear, which is only 2 points too slow to be a Derby theorist type horse. And I think if you're somebody who thinks that there's a fair bit of pace in here, which I do think there is a fair bit of pace in here, it should set up for him. But I think there are people who make that argument that Sierra Leone needs a pace setup, and I don't think he does. He's a horse that kind of seems, he seems to get it done, even though he does come from a little bit more out of it. Now you have to trust Gaff to invent a trip, but he's done that 2 times in a row. And I think I land on Sierra Leone as my top pick. I think he's the kind of horse I want to build tickets around for things like supers and super high fives. But after that, I think if you get over to those top 2, there's a really big gap. And I'll let you guys talk some more about some other horses, and then we'll loop back to some other things I want to cover.
The thing that really made me put Sierra Leone as a B, and I know like I gave myself the defensive B alert there. That wasn't for you, Mark. That was for me.
That.
Oh no, I did. I respected that. Matters.
I think this horse is going to break out the back. I mean, there's a good shot that Sierra Leone is literally 20th out of 20, and not saying that he can't win from there, but I think that's still asking a lot. I mean, this is a horse that just does not break well. So I just think that the other horses, the 4 and the 7, are both going to be much more in a much better position early than Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is really going to have to work out a trip, I think, in order to win. But I mean, does have the closing kick, I think, that you're going to need here. And Mark, you did say you don't think that he needs a setup. It doesn't matter. He's gonna get a setup in this race.
Yeah.
I think even if he did need a setup, well, he's getting it in this race, right? If there's going to be a race that someone from 20th wins, it might be this year. So I feel like this is like Caleb had a horse like this yesterday, where it's like I'm not like super thrilled to take 4-1 on this horse, but I'm not letting this horse beat me because this horse just makes a ton of sense in this spot.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think Sierra Leone is the most likely horse to run his race. Now, whether that race is a winning race or a second or a third, I would be extremely surprised if he just doesn't show up. Whereas with like Fierceness, for example, or any other horse, it really wouldn't surprise me if they just don't handle it. So Sierra Leone, I think, is going to show up. But I don't think he's so much better than this field that he can afford to get shuffled to last and have to steady twice in traffic and then get pinched. And he's not that much better than this field, which is why I have him as a contender, but not necessarily a horse that I'm going to like single on tickets or get super aggressive through. Yeah. He's the kind of horse that maybe I key as an anchor for a superfecta. I key him up and down 1st through 4th because I do think he's likely to run his race. And maybe I also key around Honor Marie is my favorite long shot in the race. That's the kind of structure I may approach. But with that being said, no reason to be against Sierra Leone because the horse just always shows up, other than the fact that it's going to take some racing luck, I think. There's a lot of chat about Fierceness in the chat. I feel like we should probably address that elephant in the room. I know, Josh, you sort of mentioned you didn't like Fierceness just because of the pace dynamic. And, Mark, I guess you sort of said that every other angle. Yeah. And I agree with both of you guys. I don't necessarily know that I would say every other, but there's just too many unknowns. You can look and squint and try to find excuses for his bad races, but in my opinion, there are none. I mean, yeah, he took a little bump in the Holy Bull. I have no idea. Yeah, that was a muddy track in the Champagne, but I don't think those are legitimate enough excuses to justify the absolute clunkers he's laid. He's never been a part of a fast pace. Even when he's made the lead, the pace has not been fast. So I don't know how much that's going to really take out of him. And yeah, I do sort of believe in the bounce theory to some extent. That was a monster effort in the Florida Derby. To be fair, he could bounce off that race a little bit and still probably win. But it seems like when he bounces, he doesn't bounce a little bit. He bounces a lot of a bit. So yeah, a lot of people like the horse. I totally get why. But for me, the value proposition is not there for a horse that has a good chance of running a great race and a real good chance of running an awful race to take as the favorite. I would rather lean towards a horse like Sierra Leone.
Yeah, I mean, to me, fierceness is your most likely. If he brings his A game or even his B game, he's your most likely winner. The thing is, it seems like the variance between his A game and his D, goes A D game. He doesn't have that sort of middle ground. And I really sort of wonder, is he really? I guess when I see a pattern like this, I say, okay, either he bounces to the moon after every start, which is what he kind of looks like on paper, or is he really a head case? And if he's really a head case, you don't want a Derby in the head case, or you don't want a horse in the Derby to be a head case. That's the worst time for that to happen. Where if they have mental issues, if they have a thing where he has to be on the lead, or he has to be clear, or he gets a little heady. I know, and again, the pedigree doesn't scream this, but he reminds me of some of these tappet horses, these young tappets who just have really quirky, heady behavior. And I sort of wonder if he's kind of in that, in that ball game. And a 20 horse field with a lot of pace early, that's really scary for that type of horse. Now, is he a horse that I want to throw off tickets? No, I don't think he is. He's a horse I think I want to use because he, again, if he the clearly the talent is there, but he's one of those horses that I don't know where he goes from here. I could see him winning the Derby and then suddenly being this absolute monster who figured out his issues and put them behind him, and they got him sorted. He's an amazing horse. Or I could see him bouncing to the moon and we never see from him or never hear from him again. And I don't really know which kind of horse he is. And I think you have to approach that. If you're simply looking at speed figures, yeah, he's got 3 efforts that probably win this, but there's just a lot of question marks with him.
I mean, I just think the pace is going to be
Yeah.
the death knell for him, and
Well,
I see
is
a
there a
horse.
case? Well, I was gonna say, is there a case it's something like a Mandaloon year where, yeah, there's a ton of pace, but the pace just holds together and kind of goes around and merry-go-rounds around the field? I mean, just because there is a ton of pace doesn't mean that necessarily a horse that's on that pace melts down. Um, Now, but if there's a case where he has to be on the lead or he has to be clear to be able to not do that, then it's more concerning, right?
Yeah, I also just I hate when these horses show up in the spot and they haven't been part of a fast pace,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
if fierceness had gone out there and set red fractions and held on, right, in one of his races, hey, we're talking a completely different story. I think at this point, I think it's the question. This is the great actor Gregory Peck said, that you never take a short price on a horse doing something for the very first time. So. Uh-oh. Oh, thank you. As I'm getting a shot of whiskey brought to me here.
Oh.
Is it a little different? It's a rye? All right, here we go. So
Is there somebody else in your hotel room? Blink
I'm
twice.
I'm not in a hotel. I'm at a friend's house.
Oh.
I know it looks like a hotel room. I mean, they have a sweet setup here, but no, I'm staying with a friend. They were knocking on the door earlier. They were looking for me to do a shot, so they delivered it to me here. But it's Southern hospitality. I love it.
Okay. But what is the shot, Josh? I mean, we need a.
I don't know, it's some kind of rye, but it's delicious.
Oh, nice. A little hot.
A little bit. I'm definitely not used to drinking high proof whiskeys anymore after kind of dialing it back a little bit. But yeah, yeah, I don't know. There's way too many question marks. I don't want to take a short price. There's too many question marks on a favorite that's going to be 2-1 in a 20 horse race. It's nothing against fierceness. I mean, obviously that last out race was humongous. And to Caleb's point, if he bounces 10 points off that, 10 buyer speed figure points off that, he probably still wins. So. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Maybe I need a too cute alert here or whatever. But yeah, I'm just against in this spot. And nothing, like I said, like that's the beautiful thing about this game. The beautiful thing, you can go shit talk your any content creator out there who makes a bold claim, and you know what you can do? Instead of just shit talking them, you can put your money up against their money. So this guy who was saying, "Oh, you don't like fierceness, I'm going to put $300 more to win." He can actually do that, and he can win my money. because I don't like fierceness. That's the beautiful part about this game, right? Andrew and I do the podcast all the time. We never agree. The three of us, I mean, there was a race earlier where I don't think we had a horse in common. Like, that's a great thing. All of our money is getting pulled in, going against each other. And that's a great thing about this game. I mean, some of the best times I've had with this game is us either sitting here, sitting in Saratoga, sitting in Airbnb, and just bullshitting and crap talking about each other's horses and races. And hey, yeah, tomorrow we're gonna put our money against each other. So, all that being said, fuck fierceness.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's two other horses that I think merit some discussion, at least for me, and that's the 10 and the 11. So the 11, Forever Young, the most interesting of the Japanese invaders. Horse is 5 for 5, comes out of the UAE Derby. The UAE Derby is nice because it's a mile and 3/16, so it's a touch further than some of the other preps. And he's looked really good. Like, he's looked really, really good. Now, obviously, a Japanese shipper, or honestly, a shipper has never won the Derby. But I think we're all sitting around here talking and saying this is probably a pretty weak Derby year. And if the Japanese are going to come in and ship and steal one, this would be the year to do it. And honestly, the Japanese breeding industry is the best in the world right now, especially when you talk about classic distance pedigrees. And they are breeding some of the best probably the best dirt horses in the world right now, especially when you consider over a mile. So I think Forever Young is an extremely, extremely interesting horse, in this race, and he's done nothing wrong in his career, which none of the American horses can say. And I know the sort of oft laughed about TO Password, the 10. I also find to be somewhat interesting in here, and
Stop.
he's a horse. No, I actually do find him interesting. So first off, his first two races, he went to the front and just kind of held on gamely. They have said in here, and I know to push back on what Josh said earlier, that they do intend to rate, that they are planning on, they've been training him to deal with a little bit of kickback, and they're going to plan to sit behind other horses. And oftentimes, I did a short on this on YouTube. These speedball horses take a while to kind of, and I shouldn't call them a speedball, but these horses that want to be on the front end and they obviously have a lot of talent, it takes them a little while to figure out kind of how to be race horses and how to really run a race and not just go to the front end and out talent everybody else. So I do kind of like T.O. Password. He's a C type. Like, he's a horse that I want 2% of my action in a pick 5 going through, and I'm okay paying that tax, just because he is 2 for 2. He has gotten it done both his times, and in looking at that last race, everybody kind of screamed, "Oh, he's short, and this horse was coming to catch him, and he barely held on." My thought was he was pretty loose the whole race, and it looked like he just was looking for somebody to race, more that he was just kind of getting a little bored on the front end because he was just, out there cruising on his own. And that is something that takes a little while. Horses need a little experience. The cavalry was coming very fast late, and he held on, did what he was supposed to do. So I think T.O. Password is a little interesting here. He has to be at a you're going to get that 30-1 price, and he's a horse I just want a tiny bit of action going through. I'm much more interested in Forever Young, honestly. I know our good friend Greg has him as an A. I have Forever Young as a B right now. I'm okay with how I have it, but
I think that he's got the right run style for the race.
Yep.
And we saw it in the UAE. I thought that Forever Young is interesting. I just hate. I hate that this could be the year, because it should have been last year. It should have been me and Caleb.
Should have been last year.
It should have been last year. It should have been Caleb and I, and Cash, and we should have been just throwing hundreds around after that bet we got in. But yeah, it's I mean, I'm with you on Forever Young. I think I was listening to the Pace Cast, and they were talking about this race, and they were talking about how the trainer of Forever Young said, "Oh, he doesn't like kickback." Well, David actually went back and watched like all his races, and he's like, he handled kickback fine. Like, and I understand that, like the trainer knows the horse better than David Aragona does, but it's probably not as big of an issue, because I heard some people really were making a big deal about, if he doesn't like kickback, how is he going to win the Derby? And
he was
yeah. Caleb, you any interest in the Japanese horses?
No interest at all in TO Password. I think I won't beat you up on a 30-1, but I think everyone's going to see the way that the other TO horse ran today and be like, oh, I got to bet the other one. This one almost won at 30-1. So maybe you'll get 30-1, 50-1, 20-1. I don't know, but either way, I don't think he's good enough to win. Might give you a thrill, but Forever Young is a horse that initially I didn't want at all. I've somewhat warmed up to him. I'm still a little hesitant. I'm just not convinced that his UAE Derby or Saudi Derby are as good as other people think they were. I mean, the horse he beat in the UAE Derby, Autobahn, his only win was a maiden race in South America. He has yet to win in his subsequent few starts while racing over in Dubai. Pandagate is a New York bred who won a New York bred stakes at Aqueduct earlier this fall. So, I mean, what was really behind him in some of those races? He beats Bookham Dano by a head. I'm just not convinced, I suppose, that he's really as good as others tend to project him as, simply because Japan has had success lately and they are coming in, he's coming in undefeated. But I respect the connections enough. I mean, Yoshido Yagahi did have a lot of success with March Lorraine as well as Love's Only You in the Breeders' Cup the last couple of years. So I respect the connections enough, and I doubt the Americans enough that I probably don't want to be right about Fierceness not showing up and leave off a horse that on a lot of metrics does fit. So I do like him, probably a B type for me, but not as high as a lot of other people are.
So I know we've only covered probably so we've talked about all the horses I like. There was another horse that, I mean, I've talked so much shit about Oak Lawn hey Chase, what's up? But dude, I don't know. I'm starting to maybe get a little bit on this Mystic Dan train, mostly because the way that Southwest, that muddy effort in the Southwest. I mean, if we get mud again, I thought this is one that's really interesting with that mud pedigree, and who's run a really, really nice figure in the slop already, is going to be coming from off the pace, is drawn inside, and is going to get that ground saving trip. Caleb, I think you might have done the video on Mystic Dan. Are you giving him a legit shot in here?
It's going to depend on what the track looks like tomorrow, about 10 minutes before post, honestly. If it's sloppy, I will move him up to a horse that I think can hit the board. I don't think he can win, but I will move him up to a board hitting kind of horse if the track is truly sloppy. On a fast track, I don't really want anything to do with him. I do think that Southwest is kind of an aberration because I mean, he ran enormous, but I think he also, in addition to loving the slop, took advantage of a very good rail that day at Oaklawn. So I think that's kind of two things that came together to result in a big race for him. So if it's sloppy again, I'd use him underneath, but he won't be on top of any of my tickets.
Yeah, and I see Fighting Irish is asking about the 6, Just Steel, who finished second to Muth in that Arkansas Derby, and the 15 Domestic Product, which I think you talked about on our shorts, Caleb. You guys like either of these horses?
Those are both horses I like. But go ahead, Mark.
I know. I think that there is some interest there, but I think both of them are horses I like underneath. I have a hard time putting either on top. Just Steel is a horse that I think probably the most experienced horse in the field. Got a couple of wins. Is an interesting player. Is a horse that is going to be part of the pace complexion, but doesn't need to be on the lead. Seems pretty tactical. And Keith Asmussen is going to get his first Derby mount, and I couldn't be happier for him. Good for him. And honestly, that Arkansas Derby effort that he was up for is the best race of Just Steel's life by quite a while. So maybe this is a horse that is kind of routing into form at the right time. It was a horse that, again, I like him underneath, and I have a hard time seeing how he wins, but wouldn't be a shocker in 4th or 5th.
Yeah, I'm not saying I think he's a likely win candidate, but I think if you look past Sierra Leone and Fierceness, I don't know that I could point you out another horse I think is very much more likely to win than he is. And arguably, if you're a time form guy, which Mark, I know that you are, he's faster than Sierra Leone. I mean, that Arkansas Derby came back faster than Sierra Leone's Bluegrass.
My take all along, and this is my take all weekend, is I don't trust any of the figures coming out of Oaklawn. Sorry, Chase, not a dig.
Don't you have to reconsider that though after today? I mean, we
I
just
kind of
saw
do. No, you're
Torpedo
right.
Anna run a hole in the wind, and then we saw the other.
That was my dig against her, and I think you're right. I kind of do need to reassess that, because clearly it's not the case. Now, it was the case at Keeneland. It seemed like those Oaklawn Park shippers were just not firing back to that form. But I agree with you. I think there was a couple of races today where I do kind of have to reassess that. Yeah, so you're very, very accurate, and I guess that's where I was going. That had been my take, and I'm kind of going, geez, after today, I do have to sort of reapproach that.
Okay, that's fair. And like I said, I'm not making a strong case that Just Steel's going to win. I'm afraid he might be a little over the top given how much he's been campaigned, but that's very typical coach fashion. But he's one that I think is going to show. He's had some bad trips in his past. His Arkansas Derby trip wasn't too bad. He had a bit of a stumble, but his past couple trips, he was extremely wide against the Golden Rail in the Southwest. A couple other just bad trips. He's one that I'm going to also be keying underneath. As well as domestic product. Domestic product is one I'm a little bit less confident on. I don't think this horse can win.
Yeah. No.
But he's enough of an unknown to me that I might throw him in third and fourth, simply because he just has never had a race that was run at an honest pace, except for the Remsen, which is over a sloppy track that had an inside speed bias. So if you kind of, discard some of that, we just don't know how good he is, but he does make a big closing effort. He has a late kick. He's a big old square on the optics plots. And, he's been closing into slow paces. So I just don't know how good he might be given a fair pace. I do have some big distance questions, and I would have loved to have seen a prep between the Tampa Bay Derby and this, even if it's just the Lexington or something. I don't like the layoff here, but he's one that, maybe I use in third and fourth.
Yeah, my biggest problem with domestic product is as Chad does not ship this horse to Tampa thinking he's really talented. He shipped him to Tampa so that he could avoid better company. So, Chad's saying, oh, this is probably the Tampa Derby is probably what, the fifth or sixth best prep. And he's saying, geez, that's the kind of company this horse is going to be a player versus. I haven't seen where maybe he's taken a big step forward since that Tampa Derby. That could be the case. He's a horse. If he finished fifth, would it shock me? No, but I would really have a hard time putting him any higher than that. And I do agree that I think I of those two, I like Just Steel more than I like domestic product.
Agreed.
Nick Feldman talking about Catalytic. That was one that I covered, and I couldn't get there. Like I get that he ran second to Fierceness, but he ran second by 13 lengths. I mean, and that number, of course, is going to be dressed up because of whatever Fierceness ran. But Nick makes a good point. It's the first time going around two turns. You saw improvement in the horse when that happened. You get Jose Ortiz aboard. But yeah, I don't know.
Such a you, Josh. This is such a you horse.
I mean, it is, and I couldn't get there. But I mean, Nick's been more right this weekend than me, so.
But that's also a low bar.
Yeah, it's true. Any other horses that you think we need to talk about in here?
Yeah, we probably should talk about Just a Touch, the number 8. I know a lot of people kind of like that horse. And he's one that I'm struggling to really nail down because he has 3 good but not great races. But, losing to Deterministic, who then came back to run a real stinker in the Wood Memorial, not great. But he did rebound with a nice second place against Sierra Leone in the Bluegrass. And I think that the pace was very fast. I know everyone says, oh, Keeneland super speed bias, but the pace was swift that day. And I don't think the speed bias claims really hold water if you're only looking at the 2-turn races. I think that was more in the sprints. So he's one that, he's very lightly seasoned. So this is asking a lot pretty early, but he's one that I think is something worth talking about.
Yeah, no, he's something worth talking about just on connections alone. My biggest thing with him is the fact that he took a massive step forward going from he had his first 2 starts of his career were on off tracks, and then when he caught a fast track at Keeneland, he took a big step forward. Now, is that just a development thing? Could be. It could be just move forward. I also sort of wonder if he is, I know that the Tomlinsons imply that he should like an off track, and he won one and he was second in the Gotham. But is it really just a case where he's a horse that really prefers faster going? He's a horse and again, I think to what Caleb just said, I had no idea no idea what to do with him. He's a horse that if you really press me, I could make him like a B type horse. I can use him a horse that I could use a lot just on connections alone. It's big name, and he's lightly raced. I would imagine the sky's the limit. There's definitely a lot of upside with this guy, you would assume. But my kind of gut says that he's a little bit suspect, and I don't know if I'm right there, but I have him as kind of that C type horse right now, and he probably doesn't make anything except for like I like to play that saver where I cover the field in the Derby in a pick 4 or something. He probably just makes that kind of a ticket.
I mean, Justify sure like the slop at Churchill, huh?
Yeah, but he's not Justify.
That's true. Funny little tidbit about Just a Touch. First on Brisnet's Prime Power, actually above Fierceness, believe it or not.
That is interesting.
That's got to be I'm guessing it's a connections thing.
I think it's because it's probably Fierceness's bad efforts drag him down.
Oh, okay.
Where Just
okay.
a Touch really hasn't run a bad race, right? And I agree with you a little bit, Mark, with the pedigree. If this horse has developed, I mean, maybe he goes back to the slop and moves forward even more. I mean, I don't know. It wasn't one I really looked at real closely, but will definitely be one. Final Fractions Theory. Just Touch is dead last in this entire field. Well, there you go. I will say, though, what I do like is out on the pace, on a fast pace, and yeah, he got passed by Sierra Leone late, but he was still there. So I at least think that the fact that he kind of kept on, I think is kind of a plus in his category. But
Yeah, and I realize people keep bringing up in chat, and I have no issues with this, but if this race comes up wetter than we expect, like, oh, there's all these outsides, the Mystic Dans of the world, or somebody's mentioning Endlessly, or, some other horse, I'm talking to Fighting Irish here who's mentioning Endlessly. I think my take is if this race comes up, I think it just moves up Sierra Leone. I mean, Sierra Leone has some of the best wet pedigree in the field, and he's got a win across the wet, and then I honestly think he has some excuses in the Remsen. So I think if it comes up wet, not that I love closers in the wet, but Sierra Leone is shown he can handle it. When I start looking at wet tracks, I start looking at, are the favorites, the most likely horses, really vulnerable because of the wet conditions? And when I can't pick chinks in those armor, I tend to then go, okay, I'll just leave them be. So I don't want to get too cute or too creative on an off track, unless I say, the favorites don't like that going. And I guess that's kind of my take. If you like Endlessly, I mean, again, this is to the Caleb line of, I'm not going to talk you off, a horse that's probably going to be more like 50-1 in the gate. But pedigree wise, I don't think it screams that he's going to love an off track. And, I have a hard time getting there.
Yeah, Mike McCarthy also didn't want to put this horse in the Derby. Owners kind of made that decision, and
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, and from what I've been hearing is he's not training like a horse that actually appreciates the dirt. At least in that initial work, I didn't see the April 26th work. But what I know from the one I did see on the April 20th, it was not pretty. It was a turf horse on dirt, and he looked like it. So I can't imagine that gets a whole lot better in the slop.
I have a $25 win bet on Endlessly tomorrow, courtesy of a side bet with a friend. I ended up winning, and the prize was a $25 win bet on the winner of the Jeff Ruby Stakes. So that was because we both love Two Phil so much. So,
okay. Yeah. I will have to say, if Dornoch does win the Derby, I'm gonna have to get a second job to cover all the side bets of the other way I have. So,
oh god.
I may have a lot of action against Dornoch. It might be a little sketchy.
Any other horses in here?
The one horse somebody brought up, I think it's on the chat, I forget who it was Stronghold. And I know you guys were both on that horse in the San Antonio Derby. So do either of you give him much shot in here?
I did the short on him, and I think my take that I said in the short was great, is that if he's your best West Coast shipper, if you have the acknowledgement that the top two trainers can't ship to the Derby. I mean, obviously, you know, he needs to make a major step forward. Is he a horse that could maybe finish out a super high five? Maybe, but I think he's leaps and bounds behind the top 6 or 8 major players. Or well, he's he's probably a horse that maybe I have 7th or 8th in my picks if I was to do a 1 to 20 kind of pick thing. I have a hard time getting there.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I have him as a C right now.
Yeah.
Probably my 5th or 6th pick. I mean, it's hard to really judge the California preps without Baffert being able to ship in, but he did beat a Baffert last out, and he actually beat a couple of today's horses in Resilience and Track Phantom in that maiden score at Churchill, actually. So there are things to like, but you'll get your price. So like I said, I think he's usable. Not one of my top picks, but very usable.
Yeah, I mean, I could get him into maybe the super high 5. My thought was, obviously Baffert can't ship in, and the Yak teams can't ship, so he's your best of those guys who tend to get those top tier West Coast 3-year-olds. He's the best of the rest, which he's 1-2 in a row. I mean, there's definitely something to be said for that, and he's done really nothing super wrong in his career. It's just I think there's a lot others that are much better.
Yeah, I didn't give him much a look, but yeah, I don't know, and maybe I'm just that down on these West Coast horses this year without Bob
Without your
Baffert.
favorite trainer?
Yeah, my favorite trainer.
Safi?
No, Safi Joseph is allowed to run this year.
Your other favorite trainer?
Oh, my other favorite trainer. Well, it's only on the turf. So if Duzil was able to run, I would
you would be okay.
Yeah.
But how about your other favorite trainer?
Which one is that?
Yak team.
Oh, Yak team. I mean, I think he went on the witness protection program after Baffert didn't send them any horses. So,
okay.
Although didn't who came back? It was one of the horses I liked in the Derby a couple of years back. Came back and won a nice race at Santa Anita sprint race.
Was it Practical Move? Was it?
Yeah. So,
Caleb, how do you come up with this stuff? Like that was the cryptic setup, and Caleb's like, "Oh, it's this horse."
I can handicap Josh better than I can handicap Churchill.
There you go. He handicaps me better than I handicap myself. So, but
why don't you just ask Caleb to like write your plays down for you?
I honestly
save
think
you so much time and effort.
I think it's decades with my future self, bad knee and hip and all.
Oh, that's true. I forgot about this. Okay,
and Papa Knight over there.
Got a lot of experience. Okay,
so true.
But all right, man. Well, I think that's gonna do it for us. I will probably be posting some stuff on Twitter and YouTube from this party. If I remember, there's like a country ham, which is basically like Kentucky's version of prosciutto. That was just like absolutely nuts that we got for this thing. We got like a mountain of cornbread. We got smoked turkey. We got smoked brisket. We had smoked ribs for dinner tonight. Like, I mean, this is going to be ridiculous tomorrow. So I will make sure to send you guys pictures. And Cobb saying cherry AI over here.
We need some.
That's what Caleb's got going on.
Hey, we need shorts of bartender Josh, and we also need shorts of Josh tasting random Southern foods.
They're making hot browns, and the first thing I thought about hot browns.
Some like a hot brown.
Some like a hot brown.
Go,
right
Mark,
there. EA on the turf, baby. Let's go,
dude. Every time
also won
somebody
the Jeff Ruby Stakes, right?
I think so. To this day, every time somebody says the sun's out, I go sun's out, guns out, and I go fuck that horse. So
All right. Well, obviously, you can catch us at ontherwronglead.com, at wrong_lead. Check out our other stuff we have on YouTube. Obviously, I have something up with Andrew Champagne. You can catch the second half of that to get some other bets for tomorrow. And then, obviously, I don't know. Maybe we hop on the Naira Bets thing tomorrow, too. Who knows? Who knows what happens?
I may be there.
I know I hopped on for a little bit today, so I think it was only Chase and I, but... along with the stars, Chase and I were the only ones and Jess Tugwell were people who did not make the poster, right? We were the filler.
Okay.
Like if this was like Lollapalooza, we'd be at the bottom in like the really tiny print that you need the magnifying glass to see. So, but hey, we made it either way. But yeah, good luck to everyone tomorrow. Shout out to Nick Feldman once again. I'm being the big winner today with that Oaks pick. Oh, shout out to the Wolf too. The Wolf had it. The
Yeah.
Wolf gave it out
Dude,
on
Chase
his.
had a day. Chase had himself a day.
Yeah, and apparently Andrew had the day too, but you had to pay in order to get that on winnersandwiners.com. So
I'm against the behind firewall thing. You know, I'm more of a free content kind of guy. Open source. You know?
we'll have to have a talk with him. But
We will.
Good luck, everyone, guys. Let's have a weekend. Fortnite is Fun also had the winner. We had to shout that out before we get off.
Good for Fortnite is fun. I mean,
We saw you